All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Q&A corner presented by High Tech U, an initiative of the University of Victoria's Faculty of Engineering. My name is Andrew. I'm the co-founder of High Tech U, and I'm so excited to be here with you today for another amazing interview with an amazing pair of interviewees. It's the worst word possible, but for our guests that are on the stream today, Paul and John are two of the amazing folks behind some really cool educational technology products that you're going to get a chance to learn about and hear about over the next hour or so that we're together. And if this is your first time being here, welcome to the stream. These Q&A corner, interactive industry interviews, and you are the interactive. So as we're going through, this is a really cool opportunity to engage with some fantastic folks that are working in this really cool sector here in Canada. So feel free to throw your questions in the stream chat as we go through. You can also go to the High Tech U website. You can find a form on there to submit questions as we're going through. But thank you all for being here, and also thank you to our two amazing guests for being here. So Paul and John, I'm going to pull you up on the stream and let you say hello to our awesome viewing audience. Here we go. There we go. All right, we'll see. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew.
How is it going today? I think we already had this conversation, but now we can have it live on the stream. How is the weather in Toronto?
It is a balmy 1 degree here, and anything above zero I will take.
Yeah, I definitely do not blame you there. As our viewers know, well, many of the viewers that are on the stream, if they've been here before, High Tech U is based here in beautiful, very truly balmy Victoria, BC. So I can never say that we have bad weather here aside from a little bit of rain, but we get our winter for 2 days a year. So nice. I feel your pain from many years in Ontario, but I don't miss it at all. So Paul and John, thank you so much for being here today. I gotta say, I love discovering the spectacular tech scene that exists here in Canada, and every single time that I see some of the products that are coming out, particularly of sort of the Vancouver area and the GTA, I'm just floored that, wow, this is a Canadian company that's doing this amazing thing. So I'm interested if maybe for those that are just kind of tuning into the stream, they have no idea what's going on. Maybe you, Paul, you and John want to talk a little bit about what Creatubbles is, what SuperCodeStrike is, and just give maybe a little background on yourselves.
Yeah, sure. John, if you don't mind, I'll go first to set the stage. So as you said, we are definitely a Canadian company through and through. But there is a bit of an infusion from Japan, which you may be aware of. So just to give a little bit of background, so I was born and grew up in Toronto, but ended up after graduating, finding my way over to Tokyo, where I spent about 15 years. And while I was there, got very involved in the tech scene, worked for a number of software companies in a variety of different industries, and eventually decided through my experiences to create Creatubbles, which basically at the very highest level was established as a company that would bring to market products that were designed to stimulate and nurture creativity, which is a natural attribute that we all have. That was sort of the main thrust of it. The first product that we put out was called Creatubbles.com, which is basically a social sharing site for young people and others to share their creative output. Around the time that I decided to bring the company back to Canada from Tokyo, because I initially started it in Tokyo, we started to notice some interesting things on Creatubbles.com, namely that while the focus of the site is basically creativity in broad strokes, and included everything from visual art to digital art to a whole range of other things in between. But there definitely was a hotspot around so-called STEM, so the science, technology, engineering, and math type of output, with a particular focus on coding, and that was matching things that we were just seeing generally in the space and in the market. So with that as sort of a starting point, we started to explore what we might do that would leverage that trend that we were seeing. And out of that exploration was born SuperCodeStrike, which simply stated is a gaming app where you can create your own games and play them on your own or with friends. So that's the basic idea. And maybe, John, I don't know if you want to add any words in more detail about kind of your views with SuperCodeStrike, and as we start to kind of dig into it over the past year, what it's kind of evolved to become and where it might be going. By the way, not to put you on the spot, but I just want to give you a chance to talk, so I'm not monopolizing everything.
Yeah, it's okay. SuperCodeStrike sort of evolved from that sort of beginning. We're trying to make it as fun as possible. We're not trying to make it like a STEM game, I guess, I suppose, or something that's strictly educational, but like kind of fun first. That's sort of where we're going from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like playing around with finding new things. So I made thank you so much. That was spectacular. And I realized that I made the one of these errors that every host makes, thinking that they know exactly how to pronounce things, in calling it Creatubbles. Creatubbles makes so much more sense now. Now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, should have got that. Okay. Awesome.
Listen, you're not the first. You won't be the last.
You know, and I know of some other companies that we work with. There's companies out there that they have like a capitalized sort of second word in their name, and I remember having conversations with some of them that the biggest struggle they had in marketing was to get people to capitalize the letter on the end of it when they were advertising it, and it's one of these things that I totally feel the struggle of, you come up with this amazing name that has this great story and then nobody gets it right. So I'm glad that I could add to that fun journey of people getting it wrong.
Yeah, the way you said it sounds like we're making a bunch of tubbles.
Yeah, I realized that.
Tubbles.
There's something here. There's a product there. There's someone out there that's going to come up with a tubble. Twitter wasn't a thing, right? So I feel like tubbles could be a thing.
Tubbles would be big.
I think it's happening. We've started a thing on this stream. So anybody that's out there, that's got a TM attached to it now. So if you're trying to steal it, you heard it here first. This is where Tubbles jumped off and got started. So thank you so much. That's like a super good overview of what the kind of what Creatubbles and SuperCodeStrike are all about. And I think I love this like kind of pivot idea, like companies that are out there, and I think you both know this, working in this industry, you got to pivot and you got to identify markets and lean into them in such a creative way. And I just love it. I've seen a lot of people try and go into this space, but when you look at just, I'll pull up for our guests that are on the stream just so you can see. So if you go onto the SuperCodeStrike site, you can actually see how the game plays through. I think this will probably be like super terrible quality. It might not be bad on the stream, but I've got like lower FPS. But this doesn't look like an educational game. I gotta say, like, this looks exactly like what's the new game that's super popular that's out there right now, Among Us. Like, I look at this and I'm like, kids that play Among Us would be into this kind of a game.
Yeah, they could be. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, here's the thing. As John said, we're definitely not looking at this as an ed tech game with a capital E, with education as a capital E, but absolutely fun first. That's the main focus. And I think that it's, on the one hand, for us, just making something that's super fun that people are going to enjoy is an absolute priority. On the flip side, I think there's a risk you can fall into when you start with education, where, and I know this from experience with Creatubbles.com, there can be a lot of pressure from expectations that you set that it's going to seamlessly slot into a very traditional 20th century classroom. And that's not what we're looking to do. We're looking to kind of break down barriers, open up possibilities, and not constrain or limit ourselves in terms of the type of fun, that we want to deliver. But the reality is, in the name, of course, is code, and the idea, as I mentioned, is that you can build your own games, and part of that includes the possibility, if you want, to quote unquote hack your games by coding them, and in doing so, while playing and having fun, you're necessarily going to learn about coding. So it's sort of a byproduct, but it's not the thing that we lead with or that we kind of place maximum emphasis on, because the first and foremost, picking up what John said earlier, fun is paramount. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, so true. So okay, so we've got these really cool products. I'm interested now. So we've kind of talked about the at Creatables piece, but now we've got kind of the job titles of CEO and art director, and I feel like there's a lot of people out there that think they know what, maybe not art director. I feel like John, you are probably a little bit safer in terms of what people assume you do, because I'm sure a lot of people have no idea what an art director does in sort of the game sector, game side of things. CEO, I think people have a little bit of an idea, and it's probably totally wrong. So I don't know if maybe John, you want to start in with this. Like, what exactly what does an art director do in a company like Creatables with like a game like SuperCodeStrike? What exactly is it that you're doing day to day?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. There's a lot that a person does at this stage. So what I do mostly is because we're a relatively small team, we're pretty much an indie team in a lot of senses. I do all the graphic design, the character design, story design. I do a lot of the UX, animation, sounds, technical art, if you're familiar with that kind of term. I do all the implementation for all that stuff as well. So I animate, and I'll do I'll grab sounds that we'll usually purchase in this instance, and then edit them to make them work in the game. I do all the modeling, the texturing, rigging of things, the shader work in the game, design, mostly anything that's like related to like kind of like the creative, the creative, like, I don't want to say creative core, because like a lot of other aspects, but like kind of like what is related to like the natural look of the game and the feel of the game in that sort of sense. Programming and all the other aspects come together to make an entire creative experience of the whole thing, but art related things.
Yeah, and actually, John, maybe I'll just add a couple of things onto that. So one is John works very closely with our marketing team. Okay. So there's a lot of assets that we require that are not specifically for the game, but are to communicate what the game is about. So there's a whole sort of track of activity along those lines. And then the other thing is, as John was saying, the look and feel. But as an example, you're working now on, I guess I'll try to not reveal all the details of stuff working, but basically some of the views that a player would have when they're playing, which is not purely aesthetic, but it's very much sort of UX or experiential.
Yeah, we work on camera control things and things like that, all of that stuff. Yeah. Basically, we're trying to make the game as fun as possible right now. So that's where we're at right now. So we're kind of doing a deep dive in a lot of the different mechanics that we have to make them, as an old boss used to say to me, more better. Make it more better.
So is that a thing that you have both found, because you both been in this sector for a while, in the game side and the tech company side, that it is sort of these small scrappy teams where you're doing a little bit of everything, that's a piece of this world and this life for folks that are out there, for an audience like ours who are considering a career maybe in game dev on the art side or on the business side, that it's not just one thing. You're not going to go in and just be responsible for this thing. If you're going into a startup, you're going to have to kind of wear many hats to be successful.
Certainly.
Yeah. So what I'll maybe do, if it's okay, Andrew, is am I allowed to answer the question from the standpoint of CEO?
Oh yeah, totally. Like this is like free form conversation, so let's just jump into it.
Just in case, because as you said, some people might have an idea, but they might be missing things. So just to kind of make sure that's clear. And then as part of that, I'll address the last question you just asked. So in terms of CEO, one thing I'll say is that it's I think for this role and other roles at an early stage, it partly is, let's say, defined on its own terms, but it's often defined by what the needs are. And that's kind of touching a little bit on what you were just alluding to in terms of wearing many hats. But in terms of what I see the job as now and the current iteration, it's a combination of things. So one of them is setting and maintaining an overarching strategy and vision that is something that is acceptable and makes sense and is exciting for stakeholders and shareholders, but also, of course, for the team, and making sure that we kind of glue those two perspectives together. Another is recruiting, basically ensuring that we have the right team in place, and that the team has all the conditions that they need to be able to work effectively. Ensuring that we have sufficient resources to do what we want to do, which is primarily funding. Developing and managing external relationships, which at the very, very earlier stage is less important, but where we are right now, that's about to become more important for us. And then setting the basis for us as a team to hold ourselves accountable for results and make sure that we know what we're going for, and that we're able to measure how we're doing and have the tools to identify opportunities to make adjustments. So that's sort of the portfolio of things that I personally find are important. And again, these may be obvious to people, but there may be one or two in there that people might not have considered. But then coming back to your other question, I think that there is let's say a romanticization, if that's a word, of very early stage startups where everyone's literally doing everything. And what I'll say is, having done this a few times, that's sustainable up to a certain point, but you can't operate like that, forever. You definitely need to have some clarity of what people are doing, some manageability and predictability. You're obviously not going to be ossified, because that's obviously the opposite of what I'm talking about. But there does need to be some structure, because I think that if you're talking about a period that's measured in months, you can kind of get away with that sort of chaos. But if you're starting to talk about timeframes that are measured in years, you definitely need to have some type of structure that people can kind of slot into, and have a sense of sort of what their parameters basically are.
Yeah, I think that's like such a key piece, this romanticizing of working in the tech sector, right? You see all these things about, this is like so exciting, you get to do everything, but you're not the first, nor I think the last, to kind of describe the need to really be so to get out of that mindset. But I think I haven't heard it so well described, so thanks for that, Paul. So if you're just tuning into the stream, welcome. You have found the pot of gold at the end of the Twitch rainbow. You have found where you want to be. You are here on Q&A Corner, presented by High Tech U. We are here with Paul Greenberg and John Little of the Creatubbles team. We're talking all things careers. We're talking all things tech industry. We are here to answer your questions as well. These are interactive interviews. So if you're on the stream right now and you've got a burning question that you've always wanted to ask a founder, a CEO, an art director, somebody working in the game industry, throw it in the stream chat, throw it in there, and we're here to answer it. You can also head over to the High Tech U website, go into our calendar, and there's a link at the bottom there. You can send it to us by email if that's where you'd like to do it, if you want to do it more anonymously. But we've got some questions that are already starting to come in, so we're going to get to those in just a minute. But I want to kind of take a little bit of a sharp turn here in the conversation, because we've kind of talked about where our guests John and Paul are now as CEO and art director of the Creatubbles team. But of course, our audience, our viewers, the majority are high school students right now, and so I always love on these streams to go down a little bit down memory lane. Hopefully, it's not too traumatic. I certainly know when I go down this lane, it sometimes is remembering the high school experience. But I'm curious for each of you, and whoever wants to start can. What was your high school experience like? Like, did you expect to end up here? Was it a good experience, bad experience? Like, did you just survive, or did you thrive in high school?
I didn't care much for high school personally. I had a lot of I liked going to school, but I didn't do a lot of work in school. I mostly drew all the time, painted a lot, and I was involved in some programs here and there, did drama classes and things like that. But no, I wasn't. I didn't really thrive until out of high school, I'd say.
So Andrew, should I go ahead and answer that? Okay, so I think I'm one of these exceptions. I absolutely loved high school, believe it or not, and I guess I was fortunate to be able to go to what at the time was a really dynamic place with really supportive teachers and a broad range of different kind of activities, both academically as well as extracurricular. And I just found it a really stimulating place. So I had awesome teachers in science and maths and liberal arts. I had a classics teacher, actually, a guy who was teaching Latin and ancient Greek, who was insane, but an amazing teacher. Still remember him. Music, sports, the whole range. It was a really dynamic environment. So yeah, I found it quite stimulating. Now, to your question about did I have any idea where I was going to end up, I didn't have the faintest clue. I was just having a good time.
I love it. That's a good answer. Also, I love that on opposite sides, we've got hated high school, loved high school. So a question that just came in via email is about kind of this high school experience, and it's what's your biggest tip to make it through high school successfully? So what's the go-to, if you had kind of a piece of advice for people that are struggling in high school right now, or it's just a chore to get through? What do you think they can do to be successful? And whoever wants to take this, go right ahead.
I guess someday it will be over. It will be over. You get to be an adult soon.
Yeah, I mean, I would say thematically, I probably would be in a similar vein, a slightly different perspective, which is just that I think there's a few things. One is, and this isn't just for the period of high school, but given that that's who we're talking to, I'll just limit it to this. My personal feeling: try as many things as you can. Don't get don't get caught up in what other people might think about an activity that you might be interested in, whether it's, as John was mentioning, drawing or Latin or music or whatever it is. Definitely try stuff. The thing that I think sometimes is a bit counterintuitive is when you're in high school, I know what it was like for me. There's all this pressure about all the stuff you got to do to prepare for university and then your career after. And it feels like there's so much weight on a lot of stuff. But the reality is there's so much opportunity to course correct in your 20s that the stuff that's happening in your teens, it's important in terms of it being foundational, but it's not important in terms of things sort of setting you on a course in life that you won't be able to change later. So definitely take advantage of that. Take risks, take chances, try stuff, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes. And, you know, I don't know how many people sort of pay attention to Malcolm Gladwell, but he one of the things that he talked about, I forget which book it was, but it was, I think it was Outliers, where he talked about this this famous 10,000 hour notion, you know, the idea that people who become really, really good at something have at some point in their life put in what will sort of add up to about 10,000 hours into that particular pursuit. If you think about it from that standpoint, the sooner, if there's something you're interested in, the sooner you start your 10,000 hours, the sooner you're going to kind of get to someplace meaningful with it. So, you know, really dig in to stuff that excites you and that you're passionate about.
I love that. So another question that came through by email, just a very it's weird. It's a lot of email messages today. The chat's quiet, but email messages are rolling and people want to be more anonymous, I guess. How's the money is the question. That's like all that I got in the question is how's the money? So I'm guessing if I can reframe that as a less teenager question, do you guys do it for the money? Like, is this world that you're in of the startup world, is it a place for somebody that's like in it for the money, or is it about something else in like building these kind of things?
That's such a funny question.
It's, yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think most of the time it depends. It 100% depends on which company you're for or working with. You know, some places can be better than others. AAA can have a big cap on entering into things sometimes that can last for a long time. And then other places can be relatively good. You know, a lot of famous video games were made with no money at all. You know, like Stardew Valley was made with next to nothing. The guy, you know, worked as an usher for years and, you know, but most video games fail as well. So it's a big risk. So you have to love it. It's a lot of freaking hard work. So if you're doing it just for money, you probably won't last for very long. You know, you have to be passionate about it because it's not easy at all to do. Even when you're really good at it, a lot of great games fail. So yeah, I don't know. How's the money? It depends, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with John on that completely. And I will say this, I mean, from my own personal standpoint, you know, I have taken a very substantial pay cut from where I was before I started the company. So, you know, I'm able to take care of myself, which is important. But you know, if you were just to look at it in terms of just like pure annual income, you know, when I was running, you know, basically the Asia operations for US-based software companies out of Tokyo, I was definitely making a lot more money and was on a salary track that would have been a lot further ahead now than I am now. But having said that, there's a trade-off because, you know, when you're working for a big company, so much of what you do is about managing and navigating through bureaucracy as opposed to innovating often. And in a case like this, where we wake up every day, we're working with people who are all excited to be doing what we're doing. We have a shared sense of commitment, and we're working on something that is really stimulating at a fundamental level. It's kind of hard to put a price on that. You know, I think that when you have that level of autonomy and ability to kind of set your direction and see very, very direct kind of feedback on the stuff that you do every day, that's worth a lot for me.
I feel like there's some I'm so glad that this is automatically recording because there's like such good quotables in here of like navigating the bureaucracy. And that's interesting because I think when people think of bureaucracy, they maybe think more government. They don't necessarily think of companies like MTV. They don't think of companies like Napster. Those are kind of seen as these. Well, I mean, if there's a teenager on this stream right now who actually knows what Napster is, I would be very surprised. Even MTV, I feel like it's a different audience, but I mean, like, certainly from for those of you who are out there, if you're wondering what Napster is, back before we had things like Spotify and other music streaming services, back in the good old days of the Wild West of the internet, or what I'd like to call the Wild West, there were companies that were doing really cool things like Napster. Obviously, anyway, sorry, this is a little bit of a history lesson. If you're interested, Google Napster. If you're on the stream and you're interested, it's really cool. Or watch The Social Network and you'll get a little bit of an idea, get a hint there. But that's a really salient piece, that even in even in kind of organizations like that, there is that level of bureaucracy. So I think that's super relevant. So another question that came in is, which is the better job? And I feel like each of you probably has your own opinion on this, but the question was, which is a better job to have, art director or CEO?
Art director.
Listen, so that's the first answer. I'll throw that out there. I'll back that too. But yeah, I mean, look, I think it's really hard to answer. It depends, you know. I think it depends on the person and their personality and the stuff they're interested in. It also depends on the circumstances. I mean, if you are, let's say that you're in a situation where your funding's running out in a month, I probably want to be an art director in that situation than the CEO, because it's a pretty stressful situation to be in. But yeah, it really depends on sort of the nature of the team and the business and all sorts of external circumstances.
Paul, it's lonely at the top, right? It's lonely.
It can be, sure.
Yeah. It's for sure. It's very stressful to run a company. There's a lot of things that Paul has to worry about that I can be blissfully unaware of. So, you know, and I just have to be creative and be, you know, a little fairy that goes around the scene and just creates, right? So, and he has to worry about the tough stuff, you know.
So I'm curious though, because obviously as the art director, you're the director of all the art pieces, and I'm sure you work with other folks. Like, that must be, in as much as I'm sure a lot of it is you, because it is a small team. John, I'm curious, do you find, or have you in the past potentially, where you've been working with artistic teams, have you found it challenging? I just can't imagine going to an artist and saying, hey, I like this thing that you did, but the rest of it we're going to get rid of, and having them accept that is a thing that's going to happen and a piece of their art. Like, have you had those roles in either Creatubbles or other places where you've had to be the voice to artists who are out there and say, yeah, sorry, it's not good enough?
Yeah, all the time. You have to constantly tell people, yeah, just that is not good enough, or it needs to change here, or we like this aspect but not that aspect. Being an artist professionally is tough for the ego. I think being an artist in general can be tough for the ego, as you have to hear a lot of tough things about things that you put your heart and soul into. And it's just the nature of it. You have to get better at each thing each time, so you have to challenge yourself. It's not personal. It's always just about getting there. So you have to like disconnect from it. It's really, really easy to get your heart set into it, and it's really, really easy to become emotional at times. And some people have it's not even a bad thing necessarily if you do get emotional. Everybody understands, as long as it's about the work, as long as it's about making sure we get there and we get a good product at the end of the day, and that we make something amazing. But it's, you know, dealing with people is really what it's about, right? Like, dealing with people is not clean. Dealing with people is always messy. Communication is extremely difficult. There's times when you think you are saying something in the most straightforward way possible, and they think they're saying something in the most straightforward way possible, and for some reason nobody's understanding anything. So communication is just wildly important. So you have to be extra great at your communication if you're telling somebody you don't like something about their work. And then you have to be very clear and concise about what needs needs to change, and you need to stand on a kind of like on a hill and put a marker down and say, like, this is what we want. This is it to be decisive, right? And that decisiveness is challenging. So, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I'll just add to this because I've worked with different people in roles similar to John's, and not to embarrass him, but I will say that he's quite good at being the recipient of that type of feedback. So, he'll put a lot of work and a lot of his heart and soul into the work, but then be able to very objectively look at it in the broader context of what we're doing, and take feedback that may not be from someone who has a creative, background, and try and really understand where it's coming from, and then find ways to incorporate it, which is such an important part of our process to be able to do that, and kind of constantly evolve and iterate upon a really solid creative starting point.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into, it's not one that's coming in from the audience, but just one that I'm curious about. And this, I think it's super relevant for people that are out there. So we just had a team of high school interns that we hired recently at High Tech U. We paid them to become software developers. We did a 10-week internship. They got to work with industry, and a couple of them created they built a game, but the question became when they were doing that was, how can I make revenue off of this? And obviously you're a game with SuperCodeStrike. It's a game company. There obviously has to be some revenue that comes in from there. John, you've worked for tons of game companies. Paul, this is your baby. I'm curious, what is, for maybe those indie game developers out there who are like, I've got this great idea, what are their pathways to turn that into a revenue generating thing, aside from putting a paywall up to say you've got to pay $5 to use our game? Or maybe that is the method. I'm just curious.
Paul
might have something good to say about that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, monetization is an interesting one. I think that there's no black and white way to kind of answer this question. But a couple of principles that maybe I'll put on the table that can maybe help think about it. So the first is that in order to be able to monetize, you have to start with something that people are just really excited about as a product. So that's the first thing, because if they're not excited about your product to begin with, then they're certainly not going to put their hard-earned money, down on it. Is the first thing. So what I would say is that, it's possible, I think, to kind of look to put up a paywall or charge money from day one, but your product, to get to a point where people are excited about it, is going to require some iteration, and that's going to require people using it for a certain period of time without necessarily having to pay for everything. So that's one point that I'll make is you've got to give yourself the runway to be able to iterate and evolve your game to a point where it is very exciting. The second point is around putting up the paywall and or at least putting up situations where people need to pay to get access to some or all of your game. I think that if you are not confident about doing that, meaning that you're not confident in the value of what you're putting on offer, then that already is probably a signal that you probably still have some work to do to get to a point where you do feel comfortable. And I guess what I would say is that we know when there's obviously market signals and metrics and things you can look at, but I think you also know when you're putting out something that you feel is worth paying for. And if you do feel that, then I think it's important to have conviction about it, because that's a signal you send to the market. If you're sort of feeling a bit, tiptoeing around the idea of commercialization, and you're sort of sure and you're not really sure, and you're kind of doing it about halfway because you're afraid of how the market's going to react, the market will smell that instantly, and you won't be rewarded for it. So I think there definitely comes a point where you have to feel like, okay, yes, this is something that I really do feel comfortable putting a price tag on, and I feel very comfortable asking money for it because I know it's something that is of value and is something that's delivering value.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Awesome. Okay, so that's good. That satisfies my interest, and hopefully for our streamers that or our viewers that are out there. So if you are a viewer that's on the stream, it seems as though a lot of people are using the form on the website, which is super exciting. Like, keep sending us questions in there. But we also have the chat over there, or down there, or up there, or somewhere. So feel free to throw some things in the chat as well. I'm super excited. We've got lots of viewers on, which is really exciting. But I'll take a maybe little bit of a pivot back towards that education piece, because we were talking high school, and for all of you that are out there, if you are like, I hated high school, then your person is that way. Nope, that way. And if you loved high school, then your person is that way. But there's a little bit of both, and it takes both to run a company. But I'm also interested in the post-secondary journey, because obviously a lot of our students that are coming through are in that level. And both of you have a crazy, incredible resume when it comes to your post-secondary. John, you're an alumni of OCAD, which if you don't know what OCAD is and you're an artist, I'm shocked. You should find out very soon. Talk to somebody. Paul, you're a graduate of MIT, a 3-time graduate of MIT. Again, if you don't know where MIT is and you want to get into the technology sector, ask somebody where MIT is. Really good school, which you will, I'm sure, have heard of. So how did your post-secondary journey impact where you are now? Because obviously, not to give too much away, but Paul, you didn't study to become a SaaS CEO or a game dev CEO, a very different kind of study. And John, obviously your background in sort of like fine arts and drawing and painting, you're now in game dev. Maybe you thought you'd end up here. So yeah, whoever wants to kind of jump in, and how did your post-secondary piece impact where you are now?
I mean, I guess like nothing. Yeah, like I didn't, gaming and painting are like, they're not really close at all. But I don't think like the skills you get in one thing like keep you from joining some other avenue of life, right? So like what do you learn when you, as a drawing and painting major from a university, is you just learn how to think for yourself, and you learn how to draw, which is the important thing. You learn how to paint, which is another thing. And then so I did that for a long time, but the skill set that I received that was incredibly important for moving into video games in particular was when I went to Sheridan College for the 1-year computer animation program. And when I went there, I was basically a Luddite by my current standards, I suppose. I knew a little bit about Photoshop. I didn't have a lot of Photoshop skills, and which is a kind of an industry standard. I had no real knowledge of computer animation technology. But the fact that I knew how to draw, the fact that I knew how to paint, the fact that all of that, those skill sets that go with that, which is composition and silhouettes and all of these other things that are involved in animation and the animation basics, they help, right? So none of it was wasted. You could go through life, and as Paul was saying before, you waste your time up to the point where you finally figure out what you want to do in life, and suddenly you're like, oh, this stuff that I thought was useless to what I knew about life is actually essential to your success. So I think that's, so you can waste your time a bit, and it may not seem like you're doing the right thing, but all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have all these skills that can make me pretty successful. So like, you can almost, it's not a fake it till you make it. It's a different concept, but it's, you can have fun doing something and then have fun doing something else.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
I couldn't agree more with that, John. I think that that's often underestimated, especially when you're younger. There's this pressure to sort of be able to draw a very direct line between some action you're doing and what it's going to result in. But sometimes you don't always have to know the conclusion, and just going deep into something and really understanding it can be it can develop very transferable skills that you can use for all sorts of things. Yeah. And then, so coming back to your question about post-secondary for me, as you pointed out, my degree wasn't in what I'm doing now. I think that MIT is a bit of a particular place. It's smaller than I realized before I went there, and probably smaller than most people realize. So undergrad, at least at the time, there were 1,000 students per class. So the whole school was 4,000 students. It's kind of like a big high school. And it was just a pressure cooker, like nothing that I could have possibly imagined. And so I think if there's one thing I would say I got out of my undergrad in particular, it was grit. It's basically kind of this sense of like, if you can go through that, you can kind of go through anything, and nothing's going to phase you. So it was just a very, very intense experience. So that was one thing. And I guess the other thing, which I do think is important as a general principle, is just finding a situation. I mean, that was a very particular situation where you're just exposed to a lot of really smart people, you know, and that also challenges you and stimulates you and makes you see possibilities that you might not have otherwise thought. And I think just as a general principle in life, seeking out situations like that and seeking out people who kind of keep you on your toes, I think is also something that's really important.
I love that. So, and it's funny, right? This, I think there's now, I had a conversation yesterday with a career educator, and it was sort of like, there's so many pathways into the tech sector, and not all of them involve post-secondary. So it's always interesting just to say, like, there is still value in that post-secondary world that you're going to go to. It just might not be what you think it's going to be while you're there. So another question, which I think is super relevant, is, did you ever, and I think this kind of ties back to that earlier conversation about high school, when you graduated from that post-secondary program, was it a pretty straight journey for you to where you are now, or was it full of twists and turns and unexpected things that have led you here? Yeah, so whoever wants to kind of take that one.
Yes, to the second one. Yeah, absolutely, twists and turns. So, yeah, I mean, both literally and figuratively. So, you know, in my case, at the time that I graduated, so you pointed out that I didn't end up working in engineering, strictly speaking, which is what I studied. And at the time, I don't know if this is still the case, but at least at the time, if I looked at the people that were sort of graduating around the time that I did, it was pretty much split 50-50 between either going to be an investment banker on Wall Street or joining a management consulting firm. Those were sort of the two things people were doing. Very, very few people were actually going into engineering. And I chose the consulting route, the management consulting route, did that for about 7 years. And that's sort of the literal twist and turns, because it took me basically all over the world, largely Latin America, Europe, and then eventually Asia, over to Japan. When I went there, it was as a consultant. So I was not expecting or planning to get into technology. And that Napster experience, which is the one that sort of kickstarted and probably is the first thing that started to point a little bit to where I am now, was actually a client. So I did a market entry strategy for them for Asia. And they eventually said, okay, great. This seems good. We'd like you to do it for us. And that's where I was at this point in my career. I think I've been doing consulting for about 7 years or so, where I thought, you know, it's really interesting to see many, many different companies, which you do as a consultant, and tackle very interesting high-level problems, which you do, but you're very rarely accountable for the advice you're given, and don't get that opportunity of just rolling up your sleeves and digging into a problem and seeing it through. And so when that Napster opportunity came along, I thought, yeah, that's something I'd like to try and sort of see what it's like on the other side.
Awesome. What about for you, John? Like, was it twist and turn? Was it a straight arrow shot to where you are now?
Yeah, I just said, yeah, as soon as I was done school, I was at Creatubbles. Yeah, let me think. Well, so I quit school. I finished school, didn't quit, graduated school. And then I was painting all the time, you know? So I had a group of friends and we all painted, and we were really into that. And we partied a lot and we had a lot of fun. And we were just sort of obsessive about it. I was obsessive about it. I painted lots and lots and lots of pictures and sold a bunch. And I was sort of, I had a couple of good years where I made a lot of work, maybe 13, 15 pictures, sold them all, and was like, everything's going to be great. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be in galleries. Everything's going to work out. But it didn't really work out. And things started getting changing for me, and I didn't really want to do it anymore. And a friend of mine asked me, there was a big gallery in the city, and they were like, he's like, I can get you in this gallery, but do you really want to do this? And I kind of realized that I really didn't. Like the art world I didn't like, and I didn't like it. I like cartoons, I like comic books, I like video games. And I was and then I kind of meandered around for about a year, just sort of not sure what to do. I made a book, a comic that didn't get published, and I was just sort of not sure what to do. And then I decided to go back for computer animation, to go back to school for that. When I first, a long time ago, I decided I was either going to become an animator or I was going to become an artist. If I got into only animation at Sheridan, if I only got an animation at Sheridan, I'll become an animator. And then if I got into OCAD, I'd become a painter. I got into OCAD, and I did the painting thing, which was good because I used it to kind of crawl out of a hole of depression. But it's circuitous. You don't really go straight from one thing to the other. And then even in video games, once I got out of school there, I immediately got into a video game company. And it was good, and I really liked it. And it was, I met a lot of really great friends, but I wanted to try other things too. I was like, what's the animation industry like? What's the TV industry like? So I wanted to try that, and I tried that for a bit. Didn't really like it. They're too bureaucratic in my mind. To go back to that, but video games have always been pretty fresh, especially in like the mobile market. They're smaller teams and they're really fun. So, so you go all over the place. Yeah.
So for all those who are watching on the stream right now, just know that where you are now is not where you're necessarily going to end up, and that is okay. So we're nearing the end of our time. So if you're on the stream and you're sitting there watching and you're like, I need to get this question in now. Now is the time to get the question in, because we're going to be letting Paul and John go. It's like almost the end of the workday. It's a Friday. They want to get out of here, get off this screen, and go home and spend time with their families.
We are home.
I was going to say you are home. I was going to say we're in COVID. So I suppose this is like the time that you are home. All right, so we'll just keep going. 2 hours now. Anyways, but I'm curious. There's sort of two questions I have left. One is a standard one that I ask at the end of every interview, but the one that I'll ask before that is just what is the thing that you look for in young hires? So obviously everybody puts out the job descriptions that say, I want somebody with 5 years of experience or more. But you can't always get those people. And sometimes you've got to hire the young people who are new into the industry. So for a question out to both of you is, what is it that you look for in those young hires without any experience that convinces you to take a risk on them?
I look for drive, and willingness to get their hands dirty in something they don't understand. Because really, like, you don't really know anything when you start. You don't, like, even me, still don't know anything. So like when I'm doing, I have to learn every day something new to try to figure out what's going on in the business that I do. So if you're a young person and you go into to do a job and you say, I don't know how to do this, and that's the end of the story, then that's not the person we can work with.
Yeah, awesome. I have pretty much the exact same answer. So I would describe it as resourcefulness, and then I'll go back to that word that I mentioned earlier, which is grit, because as John mentions, part of it is as a young hire, you don't know anything. But then the other thing you have to kind of layer onto this is, in an industry that is evolving so quickly, pretty much every week, every couple of weeks, every month, we as a team are encountering stuff that collectively we don't know the answer to, and we have to figure out. And so you've got to be not just comfortable with that, you've got to embrace that type of situation. And I think the way that you do it, exactly as John said, is okay, the reaction to hitting a wall where there's a problem that you don't know the answer to, or you may not even know the question to, you've got to be excited, I think, about rolling up your sleeves and educating yourself, and getting your head around the problem, number one. And then the second thing is, particularly as a young hire, one of the things that I guess is easier to do is to kind of identify problems. But when you are in a smaller team and you're there to sort of add leverage to that team, you should also have the instinct to not just bring problems, but also bring solutions. That's really, really important. And solutions, by the way, that have some rigor to them. So not just, seat of the pants, gut type of solutions, but things where you sort of have taken the time to understand a problem, to understand the space of the problem that you're dealing in, and to come up with ideally 2 or more options of ways that you might resolve it. And if you can get into that type of habit, you'll make yourself a very valuable member of any team.
I love that. That's amazing. And I think, I love that. There's so many great quotes from both of you in terms of like those pieces that are super important. So I'm going to leave the final question just for a minute while I kind of wait for other questions to go in. But I do want to just kind of transition over because I want to sort of provide an kind of last opportunity for people that are tuning into the stream late. So if you've just arrived, which I know some of the viewers have, I'm sorry. You're literally coming in 4 minutes before we are ending our Q&A corner for today, but that's okay. Because if you're interested in connecting with Paul and John, you can find another way to do it. But if you're interested in where Paul and John are from, they are from the Creatubbles team behind SuperCodeStrike and obviously the Creatubbles platform. I don't know, is there anything you want to kind of say about either of these for people that are maybe interested in learning more, either about SuperCodeStrike or about Creatubbles? Just sort of something quick.
Yeah, go to SuperCodeStrike in the App Store. That's the one thing I want to tell people. Go check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, download it.
So is it for Apple devices? Is it for so any Apple device, like your phone, your iPad? Does it have to be a computer? Like what's the? Yeah,
so it's app based, and the first focus for us has been the iPhone, only iOS, in Canada only. And that's as I was going back to earlier, understand the game and really iterate and evolve it and get it to a point where we feel really confident about it. As we move forward, So first focus, as I said, was iPhone. We've very recently added support to iPad. So those 2 devices are supported in Canada. And then as we go forward over the next sort of few to several months, we will be, number one, adding other markets. So it'll be available outside of Canada. And then the other thing we'll do as we go forward is we will absolutely support Android eventually, but we just have some iterations to go through before we are supporting 2 separate platforms at the same time.
Totally. John, anything from you on SuperCodeStrike?
Pardon me?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, John. Okay.
John, anything for you? Anything you want to throw in?
SuperCodeStrike is an amazing game. It's super fun. You can build your own games in it. You can adventure with friends. It's like a little bullet hell at times. It's amazing.
Awesome. Okay, so then that brings us back to the final question that I always ask every guest when they're on the show. And these are like, they're the pieces that I pull out of these streams when I'm making, like, you're not going to watch this whole hour-long interview unless you've been here the whole time. But if you're going to watch something, if you're going to get one message from each of Paul and John, like, what would be the most kind of salient message for those folks that are looking to get into the tech industry, into the gaming industry, to transform their ideas that they have now in high school into a career? Like, literally the most intense question that I can possibly ask, I'll throw to you at like the very, very end of the interview. So either you want to actually take this one?
Yeah, finish what you started, I guess. There's a million roads to getting into video game industry, But if you're in all the ways you're going to go, all the projects you're going to do, finish them, move on, do something else. Just always finish.
Awesome. All right, Paul, the final word over to you.
Yeah. So I will second what John said, and then I'll add three things that I think sort of stand out to me as really important. So the first one is to be an avid consumer of games, or specifically the types of games that you're interested in. Do play a lot so that you really understand sort of a second nature what they're about. And make notes, whether it's mental or otherwise, of things that the ones you like or the ones you think are successful have in common. So you really start to understand sort of what's at play there. The second thing is, it's never too soon to try to create your own thing. So it doesn't have to be digital, by the way. You could create something analog, but basically, to try and uncover the principles that govern a successful game. And again, that can be digital, it can be analog, whatever, but create your own things. And again, make note of what works and what doesn't work. And the thing about creativity and creation is it's a skill. And like any skill, it's something you got to practice, you got to develop. So the sooner you start to create stuff, and the first ones you could do are going to be horrible, but with each subsequent thing you do, you're going to learn, you're going to improve, and you'll get better. So the sooner you start that process, the better. And then the third thing I'll just say is, and this may or may not be for everyone, but for me personally, I think consuming information is really important. So articles, books, blogs, people that podcasts, videos, all sorts of content on the area, on the space, on the topic, and try to expose yourself to people with varying points of view, so you kind of get a bit stretched, and you're not in your own kind of information bubble, and see different points of view. Those are three things that I would sort of say you could do today, and will probably serve you well.
Jesus, Paul, that's amazing advice.
Yeah. See, and the advice lives on in perpetuity. It will live forever on the interwebs. So I love it. And honestly, if you are just tuning into the stream because I'm seeing some new viewers that are coming on in the different places I'm watching, I'm so sorry that you've missed this, but you caught a really good piece. And I think, just like Paul said, consume information like this entire Twitch stream, which is going to be here on our Twitch channel. It's also going to be over on our YouTube channel, so you're able to subscribe to it over there. If you're interested in finding out more about what is going on, where John and Paul are coming from, head over to SuperCodeStrike.com, download the app for the App Store, get it on your iPhone. I've got an iPhone, and I'm going to be downloading it a little bit later today to check it out. I'm super excited. And Paul and John, I just got to say, thank you so much. Like, such unique perspectives, but some really core common themes. Like, I think for all those people that are on the stream, I always get people sending me notes afterwards, just saying like, "Oh, Andrew, I love these streams. Like, please tell the guests they're so fantastic." And so from all the viewers that aren't able to chat right now, that are watching this over their lunchtime on their phone while they're eating their sandwich, masked up next to their 6 feet apart from their friends, thank you both so much for being here on the stream today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. A big shout out to also it's Alexis, right?
Yes, it's
yes.
Alexis.
Yeah, big shout out to Alexis for hooking this up. The power of social media. So thank you so much, Alexis, for making this happen.
Oh, Andrew,
Yeah.
sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's
right at the
okay.
point when you're kind of wrapping this up.
No,
I
it's
just
okay.
thought of something.
Yeah.
Now that you're mentioning Alexis, so one of the things we are definitely interested in at the moment is we have these groups of kids who are getting together and playing the game with their friends in what seems to be something that we might call like a SuperCodeStrike club. So basically, they'll get together regularly, play together, build games together. And what we want to do is seeing that is support that. And so we have some ways in which we can create some nice incentives for people who do want to set up a club and help them kind of get that off the ground. So if there's anyone who, and I'll just give a couple of categories that people may fit into if they're listening to this. If you are homeschooled and you have a group of friends that you regularly do learning stuff with, you want to contact us, we can support you. If you are a middle school teacher in that range of sort of, 12 to 15, and you have some students who are looking for something kind of fun and interesting to do, and they want to create a SuperCodeStrike club and play the game and do some coding together, we can definitely support that. And if you have some other configuration you think should be interesting for us, and you've got 3 to 5 people that want to get together regularly and play the game and are looking for support from our team, any of those, please contact us. You should be able to find a suitable email address right there on the website. There you go. Or you could also use contact@creatubbles.com, that email address, either one. And if you have any ideas that fit within what I just mentioned, or something I may not have mentioned that you think would be interesting, please do reach out.
Awesome. So I've thrown that in the chat, contact@Creatubbles, and also it'll be in the description below if you're catching this on YouTube, as well as links to all of the stuff that we covered today, to SuperCodeStrike, to Creatubbles, to heck, I might even do links to MIT and OCAD if people are not sure what those are, and I'll find something that introduces folks to what Napster is as well. So thank you again. No, that was perfect. That's the perfect time to cut me off from talking, Paul. So it's that was amazing. And yeah, if you're out there, this is the team behind a really, really great tool, a really great platform. So if you're interested in getting involved, yeah, head over to supercodestrike.com. You can fill out the contact us form and get in touch with them there. You can also get in touch at contact@creatubbles.com. That link is going to be down below, the email, as well as in our chat log that's here on the stream. And I might even put it at the bottom of the screen when I do some editing with this. Again, Paul and John, thank you guys so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you, to share the awesome work that you're doing with both Creatubbles and SuperCodeStrike. And I'm super excited to see what happens next. And I hope this isn't the last time we're connecting.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrew.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank you.
much.
And thanks so much to everybody else that's out there. So if you're just tuning in, this has been Q&A Corner presented by High Tech U. I'm so glad that you tuned in to check out the stream. Be kind, be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next time here on Q&A Corner presented by High Tech U. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.